Tonight, horror in the City of Light. Terrorists launch a murderous attack in Paris, gunning down 12 people in cold blood. United in grief, thousands flood the streets with messages of solidarity and defiance. Storm damage, counting the cost of a gale force battering as a skydiver relives his wild ride.
I really thought that was gonna be the end of me. I thought that was it. You know, it's all over Red Rover.
And in the pink for a good cause at the SCG.
This is 10 Eyewitness News with Candice Wyatt.
Good evening. First tonight, terror in Paris. The world is reeling after 3 armed gunmen stormed the offices of satirical magazine Charlie Hebdo, shooting dead 12 people in France's worst terrorist attack for half a century. Global leaders have condemned the attack as a direct assault on democracy and freedom of expression. And it has triggered a wave of solidarity, with rallies held across France and around the world. Daniel Sutton begins our coverage.
It is the final minute of the massacre, as the gunman...
Tonight, terror in Paris. A bloodbath as Islamic extremists open fire in a newspaper office. One of the suspects has surrendered, but 2 more are still on the loose. Thousands fill cities across Europe and an incredible outpouring of grief. Also, the skydiver who thought he'd die when a storm blew him off course. Melbourne's big clean-up from a wild burst of powerful summer storms. And a family ruined by fire left with nowhere to go.
Live from Melbourne, this is 7 News with Jennifer Keyte.
Good evening. One of the 3 suspected terrorists being hunted by thousands of police in Paris over the horrific massacre has surrendered. The search is continuing for 2 others who walked into the office of a satirical newspaper and opened fire. The Islamic extremists were shooting to kill and soon had 12 victims, including a policeman who was helpless on the ground when he was murdered at point-blank range. The tragedy has resulted in incredible scenes in Paris and other capital cities across Europe as thousands fill the streets in a show of solidarity. Hugh Whitfeld is in Paris and begins our coverage.
Terrified office workers scramble across a rooftop, while below, the final act in a 5-minute massacre.
Tonight, no mercy. 12 people massacred in Paris as police hunt the brothers behind the deadly attack. Bruised and battered skydivers tell of their terrifying plunge. A new storm front bears down as the massive cleanup continues. A father of 2 drowns while swimming with his children. And the SCG turns pink for Jane McGrath.
This is 9 News with Peter Hitchener.
Good evening. The world has reacted with disbelief and revulsion to the terrorist massacre in Paris. 12 innocent people died when heavily armed Islamic extremists stormed into the office of a satirical magazine and opened fire. Peter Stefanovic begins our coverage from Paris.
They were men without mercy on a street in Paris, jogging up to a policeman, wounded and defenceless, shooting him dead point blank. The brutal moment came at the heart of the murders.
Terror in Paris. 12 people killed in the offices of a satirical magazine and the gunman still on the run. Standing up for freedom of speech, people around the world remember those killed and the values they held.
All over the world, we're going to fight against those guys who, don't like freedom of speech.
Cleaning up after a close shave, while authorities warn of days of heavy rain and flash flooding.
It is likely that some areas of the state will experience rainfall in excess of their January average over just a day or two.
And all aboard the Elvis Express, thousands of fans celebrate the king of rock and roll.
Well, this has been on my bucket list for a long, long time, so we decided last year that this was a year.
Good evening, Lisa Tucker with ABC News. 2 gunmen are on the run in France tonight after a bloody terrorist attack on staff at a satirical magazine in Paris. 12 people were killed, including 4 renowned cartoonists and 2 police officers. Charlie Hebdo has a long history of mocking politicians and religion, and it's believed this attack was in revenge for its cartoons about Islam. Europe correspondent Mary Gearan is in Paris, near where the attack took place. Mary, what's the latest on the hunt for the gunman?
Lisa, the latest news that we've heard from authorities on this massive manhunt is that several people were held and detained overnight in connection with the investigation, and the operation is still continuing in Reims, about 140 kilometres outside of Paris. Other than that, the details have been sketchy. What we do know is that 2 men, French men of Algerian descent, are still at large, and they're considered armed and dangerous. There was a 3rd man who had been named as a 3rd suspect, an 18-year-old man. Now, he has handed himself into police. It's been reported here because he saw his name on social media, and it's unclear now what his involvement is in this attack. It's been a pretty sleepless night for people here in Paris and across France as that manhunt has continued after such a shocking attack. Let's have a look at how a dramatic day unfolded.
Well planned and in broad daylight, the brutal attack that brought terrorism to a quiet Parisian street. Frightened office workers captured on video 2 masked gunmen in black commando gear storm the offices of the satirical magazine.